Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Two topics in this video: Zhang Zhilei blasting out Scott Alexander. So not so much a post-fight review because it was all over in a round. It's more the message it sends. And towards the back end of this video, Jermaine Franklin back in action after almost 2 years out, hasn't fought since 2019, gets a W, stops Rodney Moore in Gary, Indiana, and he advances to 21-0. So we'll talk about that briefly, more so about the what next, because getting a tune-up against a journeyman is fine. It's really the what next, because 2 and a bit years out of the ring, not good. But Zhang Zhilei was meant to be fighting Filip Hrgovic this weekend, and obviously because Hrgovic pulled out due to the death of his father, he had to face Scott Alexander as a late notice opponent. And we knew he was going to win this fight, but I don't think we necessarily expected that this was going to be all over inside a round. Scott Alexander has proven to be notoriously durable in the past, but that durability failed him. The left hand of Zhang Zhilei just absolutely wrecked him, basically out before he hit the canvas. Tried to briefly get up, or made motions with his body to try and get up and just couldn't, obviously, and it was all over. So it was a good win. This was probably better than I expected. I actually thought this could go some rounds, and if Alexander was able to push it later in the fight, maybe we would get to see where Zhang and his gas tank was at, because we've got questions about that after the Forest fight, where he had a few issues and then ultimately went to hospital afterwards. Says it's all good now drinking extra water and yada yada yada, all that sort of stuff. But he didn't get paid for overtime in this one. Blast Scott Alexander out. First man to stop Scott Alexander, and that is a message in itself of sorts. And I'm not going to go crazy and say, wow, this is the best thing ever, because at the end of the day, Scott Alexander is a fighter on the way down. He's been relatively inactive, drafted in here at short notice, blasted out in a round. Not as the sort of performance he was expecting to put up, or others were expecting him to put up, but it is what it is. But Zhang, the message that he sends is, look, I've got power, it can change a fight. And that is a timely reminder for Filip Hrgovic, because what we saw in there was Scott Alexander basically presenting this target for Zhang to unfurl that left hand. He did, connected all over. And Filip Hrgovic in recent years, under the tutelage of Pedro Diaz, has lost some of the movement that he used to have in the amateurs. And, there is a question about how he's going to fight going forward now that he's left Diaz. Is he going to be a bit more fleet of foot, a bit more defensively responsible? Because I think we all remember different fights where Hrgovic has basically just stood there and taken punches, like he's eating Tic Tacs or something, just, give me some more, give me some more. He can't really afford to do that too many times against a guy like Zhang Zhilei, who we've seen in other fights in the past couple of years. Devin Vargas' fight was a good one, for example. Vargas was providing a bit of a tricky test in spots for Zhang. And I actually thought that ahead of the brutal knockout that Zhang got against Vargas, that Zhang was looking a bit limited. The movement and just, I think, the height difference too, and the skills that Devin Vargas had was problematic for him. And I thought the knockout flattered to deceive, because it's one of those paper over the cracks type situation. So the message from Zhang is he's got power, and if it hits you and he hits you on the button, you're going to go. You're at least going to drop to the canvas. A guy like Jerry Forrest found that out firsthand. Dropped 3 times in the first 3 rounds of the fight against Zhang. What was it, a year or so ago? So Hrgovic is going to need to assess this performance by Zhang, and he's going to need to have a little bit of caution. There's going to need to be some head movement, some defensive responsibility, because he can't just expect to eat punches and try to walk through them and have success. I think most people will make Hrgovic a favorite in a fight with Zhang. But the thing is, if he gets caught with too many shots, and he kind of has been a bit leaky on the defense in recent years, it's going to cost him. So this is a timely reminder. Zhang's got power, and if you're not careful, he'll turn your lights up. And that would sort of derail Filip Hrgovic's career a couple of years. And given it's been such a slow burn until this point, you can't really afford that. So Zhang, though, good performance, did what he had to do, probably better than advertised. I think people expected it was going to go some rounds at least. Scott Alexander's, he's not terrible, but he's no great cheeks either. So this was always going to be a win for Zhang one way or another. On to the other fight. So you have Jermaine Franklin returning to the ring, first time since 2019. So there's been a number of issues going on behind the scenes, which Franklin has cited on his social media, hasn't really gone into any depth. He is still promoted by Dmitry Salita, and we'll talk about that soon, because it's up to Salita to actually get him some meaningful fights. But in terms of this fight in Gary, Indiana, and some reason that feels really familiar, like a movie was set there or a TV series, something like that. It just escapes me at this point. Someone can let me know in the comments. But of this fight with Rodney Moore, you can see here. So he stops him. This was scheduled for 8 rounds. The 8 rounds obviously was not required. Jermaine Franklin gets the stoppage, advances to 21-0. And the question becomes, well, what next? A little bit of rust has been shaken out here, and he did what he had to do. And what next? His promoter, Dmitry Salita's got to actually do right by him, because at this point, Jermaine Franklin needs the step-up fights. He needs those fights to take him to the next level. And maybe they could look to revisit that fight with Stephen Shaw, which never went ahead. That was a really good crossroads fight for both. Both those guys needed it. It fell through due to COVID, which Franklin got. But it would be good to see that made again, potentially. And if they can do it, because that was meant to be on Ring City the first time, I'd like to see it. But I guess who's going to pick it up? Potentially within the Salita stable, maybe there's the likes of Abdi Dovkaev. If Gunnar Kolbeinn Christensen gets a win in June when he's next fighting, maybe him. I think Salita needs to actually start having a little bit of an in-house tournament with some of his heavies, including Otto Wallin. He's in there as well. I mean, Wallin and also Jermaine Franklin, that might make some sense too. But you can't just have Jermaine Franklin sitting on the sidelines for a couple of years at a time, because you're wasting the best years of his career. And we just don't really know how good he is at this point. He's looked okay at times. He's looked a little shaky in some other fights, but he's clearly better than, some of his stablemates. He would beat Abdi Dovkaev. He would beat Gunnar Kolbeinn Christensen. But we need to get a bit of a barometer of where he's at this stage of his career. So I'm not saying jump straight into something that's, well beyond him. Tune up now, something a bit better, and then hopefully by the end of the year, a bigger fight. Stephen Shaw, something like that would be great. Remember Dillian Whyte as well. That was also an opponent that was mooted for a period of time last year. Whyte, now coming off that loss to Tyson Fury, maybe he would look to resurrect that fight with Jermaine Franklin, which would be a massive opportunity for Franklin. So Salita, his promoter, needs to actually get something going for him, because otherwise the best years of his career will just ebb away. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.